Welcome to Spirited Straight Talk, the podcast to help you thrive with the help of spirit. I'm Deb Shepard, psychic medium, spiritual teacher, and author. Each week, I bring new insights to help you heal from loss, connect with spirit, and turn setbacks into triumphs. So let's get started. There's one thing I know. We, the people, love to help people. It's feeling of value that we're needed, that we help make a difference in people's lives. And we do that. We certainly enjoy where people see us or they hear a podcast or read our book and say, that was so helpful. There's a good feeling about that. However, does it mean you are attracting toxic people because of that? And that's our topic today, about relationships that become toxic. And also to look at, are you a toxic person in someone else's life? Because I know when I have been around individuals that just seem to dump on you, that they always have the same issues or the same problems, you feel like the life just got sucked out of you. And the first thing I want to do is take a shower, have a cocktail, and watch some humor, right? Don't you feel that too, Dana? I go around people sometimes and we are trying to listen and be there for people, but there's times where it just feels like the same person has
saying the same thing,
doing
the same thing over and over. Yeah.
And we've talked about this in our podcast about creating boundaries. So there are boundaries with toxic individuals, but I also know that we sometimes keep trying to, let's say, fix the person that's toxic. Like maybe we'll say one thing or do one thing, and then all of a sudden their life changes. But unfortunately, those people are really addicted to those circumstances. They love having that story.
You mean people who want to help?
Or both sides.
Or the one who, okay.
I think both sides. I think the toxic person loves having the story. They love resharing it. They feel like it creates their worthiness. And
they regurgitate
over
and over again instead of
making the change.
Right.
There's a difference when someone needs help and you're there to listen. It's that person that's constantly, it might be a different story, but the same circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you're the person that is addicted to helping people, because that creates a lot of value, especially if you're not happy in certain aspects of your life. The first thing you feel is like, if I can help that person, that's going to make me feel good. Like,
or you're driven by that.
Yes.
Yeah. You're driven to help because of how it makes you feel. So you feel like you have to help everyone.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you're just going to, eventually you're going to burn out.
Sucked dry.
Yes. That can really happen. And I think I want to look at different circumstances of this, because you may just have a friendship that is toxic, which is a different type than it may be a family member or a coworker. If you're in that coworker situation, you may feel as a healer or someone that's a great listener that this person always comes into your office or into your space, always dumping on you. And how do you manage that if you're not their boss? Those things.
Right.
And then if it's a family member, of course, you want to support your family. And at what point do you kind of step back and create the right words in the right situation so that you're not being mean? Because you don't want to be mean or insensitive and not have compassion.
Right, right.
But also figuring out what the attachment is for you. Why are you cultivating it? Why are you adding more energy to that relationship?
Mm-hmm.
And if you are trying to help somebody that's toxic, but you complain about it to somebody else over and over, it's the same cycle.
Mm-hmm.
So what you want to look at is, how do you not take that energy on and then go to somebody else and complain what they keep doing to you? So
right. I think there's a difference. Like I remember being in a situation a few years back where I was constantly complaining about the relationship I was in. It was like, this was wrong and this was wrong. And it really was wrong. All this stuff really was bad in the relationship. And it was very toxic. But I kept complaining about it, trying to figure out what should I do. And finally I realized, when I started making decisions, it was stop talking about it. Do something. So I think there's a difference between that type of Or do you feel there's a difference between that type of processing versus somebody who is toxically trying to get your help on everything? Or
I think it is that there's times that we do need to process 100% before you end a partnership or leave your job or get angry, of course, there is a process. One of my things that I teach is to record your story and listen to it several times a day. People don't want to do that, but it's important to listen to yourself to understand that's what you're sending to the universe. And this is what you're telling people. And how do you think life is going to change if that's your story that you're sharing and thinking?
Especially if all of a sudden people start to leave you and start to exit from your life, something's going on. So yeah, pay attention.
Pay attention. Right? And again, there's so much therapy and books and like us, we have our podcasts that can be helpful, but it's about taking accountability and making the changes in your life. And so we have a lot of ideas of how to manage someone that keeps showing up in your life that is toxic, things that you can do that you can implement that will begin to kind of shift that energy with that person. Because if you keep trying to respond to it, that person is going to continue. It's like a child that gets upset. And instead of giving them new tools or giving them a timeout, and we keep talking about it, the kid is still getting attention. We're putting energy on it.
So we talk about this a lot where I don't want to say a lot, occasionally, we're getting together with somebody in our life. I'm, not anybody particular, but where we find it difficult to make that time sometimes because it's like, walking away is like you've been dumped, all this energy has been dumped on you and you feel like you have to cleanse yourself of it, right?
Take the shower,
right.
Yeah.
Not to say that friendships, you don't get together with somebody and then talk about what's going on in life and stuff like that. But
there's a difference between being there for family and friends and coworkers and people in our life, supporting them. It's a difference between that and someone, and we're going to talk about this, about the difference in the relationship to understand the signs that you may want to look at this relationship and maybe not support it the way you've been doing it.
Okay. And so you have some specific things that will help you identify that then.
Absolutely. I think I wrote down like 9 of these things to look at, and then we'll continue with that. But one of them is, what is your part in this relationship? Like, what are you getting? So if it's a marriage, a business partnership, do you feel like you have to support this relationship versus just a friend that maybe you think, I just need to let this go? Because there is a difference. And what part are you playing in it? And is that relationship, are they doing their part? And we're going to, as we go through these statements or things that I've written down, is to look at how that works. Are you giving 95% and they're giving 5%? Or are they still taking 100%? So that's where you want to create those boundaries, see your value in a different way. And how much do you continue to enable that individual? The second one, are they interested in your life? And you and I find that where I think people are not trained, or maybe it's social media, these kind of platforms where people will just post things and they don't really ask questions, or there's not a response. So if you're not getting questions from that individual, they're not
like you say something and they just move on with whatever their topic
doing.
Is.
Yeah. And there's more things about those conversations, but it's never about, well, how are you doing? Or what did you do this weekend? Or how was that vacation? It's just about them. And that's where that they're just there to basically suck up the vibes that you've got. And that's why you're going to feel drained. And as we talk about some of the ideas that you can do that will help shift that energy for you. I hear about this when people in offices, like, that person's coming towards you and you're
like, oh shit. Here they come.
Or family, scenarios or whatever that is, that you feel your whole body feels it has a lot more extra weight. When you have, this is number 3, when you have something good to share, do they turn it around and make it about them? Do they make you feel guilty for your success? Do they say, well, that will never happen for me? Or, you always have the best luck. I never have good luck. Making you feel ashamed for your success. Again, that is a person that's toxic. They can't be your cheerleader. and they really don't want to support you in life. And right there,
Like a comment of, yeah, I did that 3 years ago.
yeah, that one.
Or, well, they try to one up you.
Always.
The one uppers, I call them.
Oh.
They're one uppers.
Oh yeah, it's, I don't mind that they share their experience.
Fixer upper, right? Just kidding.
And I don't care that they share that they had a similar experience, but why
Right.
can't they give you that,
It's a
1
constant
minute, that
comparison.
60 seconds of, wow, that is really cool.
Mhm.
I'm so happy for you.
Mhm.
And I had that experience, and it really made a difference in my life versus making you feel like yours is not of value.
Right.
For you have a tendency just like this to hold back and not share your success because they like to make your situation worse. And again, just like what we said, well, I've already done that and it took you long enough to get there, or whatever their statements are. So you just don't say it. So you end up not being authentic. You pretend in the relationship.
Or they just bypass what you just told them, which
Mhm.
means they're not listening. They're not
Mhm.
actively listening to you. They're thinking about their response instead of having that back and forth understanding and conversation. Yeah.
We see this in sales. You see it all the time.
Oh God, it drives me nuts.
So that to me
Oh
is
my God,
toxic.
it drives me nuts.
You watch it, Dana, because you've been in marketing all your life, and we're trying to explain what our needs are or what we're telling them what we like or dislike about the situation. And
They don't listen.
they don't listen. They're cutting you off. And you just had this happen this last week.
Did I?
Yeah, with a mortgage company. They wouldn't listen to
Oh,
your
yeah, yeah.
statement
Yeah.
and wanted you to apologize to
we had
them.
it out.
Yeah.
We had it out because,
And that's that
He
toxic
wasn't
person.
listening.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
wasn't listening.
Mhm.
It was about him.
and I'm usually really patient until the third time I have to explain something or try to make myself clear. And then I get really impatient and they're like, oh, where did you come from?
Well, if you let
You're
me,
evil.
if you let me finish my sentence.
Yeah.
And I've had to really learn not to interrupt. This has been a big thing for me because I would, someone's telling me like, oh, this is really great. When they're not done, or try to give them an answer. And I've really had to bite my tongue
And listen.
and listen, because it is a technique. It is a practice,
Mhm.
and people want to be heard. And so that's the key here is
They want you to actively listen to what they're saying before you respond. It's like, listen and contemplate what they're
Mhm.
saying before
and respond to what they're saying versus jumping to another.
topic or
Topic.
conclusion.
Mhm.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. Or acknowledging. When you said this, that brought this to mind. That's a
Mhm.
better way to communicate.
Mhm.
And this really is about, the language of love, I guess, listening to whoever is in your life. And if they're not listening to you, how much do you have to participate
Yeah.
in the toxic relationship? And
Yeah.
that's part of
I
this.
think that's a big problem in our society right now is listening. It's-
What? I'm sorry, that joke.
listening is an art. It really is. I feel like listening is 50% of how to have a conversation.
Mhm.
And so many people have trouble with it.
Mhm. And even if you read any books regarding good communicators, that is the number one thing, learning
Yeah.
to listen
Mhm.
and actively respond with not having your agenda.
Mhm.
Unless you want to get rid of them, get them out of the room right away, or situation, maybe that's different.
Yeah.
They also they will turn around a situation and make it about them. We talked about that. 6 was they have to advise you so they feel better. You don't even ask for their question, but you're just sort of talking and they start giving you advice. That's fingernails on a scrap.
Boundary.
That's fingernails on a chalkboard for me. Remember that when people are talking to you about a problem, don't feel like you have to respond with a solution,
Mhm.
because that ends up there's more tension with the communication. Instead, by saying, thank you for sharing, this is my joke. When someone shares and they've crossed boundaries and I don't want to have advice at that time, I say, thanks for sharing, because I don't want to put more energy into it. But bottom line is, don't give advice. It might be saying, well, I'm listening to this. Do you want my insight? Do you just want to share? Sort of set the intention in the beginning of what they're needing if they're talking to you,
Mhm.
because then you know that it could just be, you're a listening ear,
Mhm.
but don't try to give advice.
Most of the time, people just want to have you listen, I feel.
Mhm.
unless they say, what do you think?
Right.
So I really do try not to give, that's just me, myself. I try not to give advice unless I'm asked for it.
Mhm.
But
Because
You
we have
know.
a tendency to want to solve it for them.
yeah, yeah.
And I think there's another way of doing it that is more powerful.
Mhm.
And it's also not dragging out that conversation if you're not wanting to be in that situation with that individual.
Yeah.
So
true.
that can be part
Very
of it.
true.
7, they seem to judge at the beginning of the encounter. So they may, if you start talking to somebody, and this is if you're not the toxic person, they already feel like they're judging you, or you feel like you're judging that individual. So it's how do you take that piece out so that you're not engaging more, I guess, or not taking that on. And I always talk about the law of attraction, how energy feels. And sometimes if we're carrying different intentions, it can add to that conversation or that relationship. Does that make sense? I know it sounds a little weird.
Because do you mean because you're putting that energy out there of judgment or
Them
of
judging you or
fearing of being judged? So
Yes.
it just kind of bounces back and forth, that energy between the two of you.
yeah, it's not a great
Bounces back and
it's
forth.
not like a great conversation.
Yeah.
So again, putting your intention is what is your intention of that conversation? And especially for the person that's toxic, which may not understand this, but if that person's coming to you or you're going to somebody and you're feeling that judgment, kind of just check in a little bit and think about, is that where you want to go in this conversation? Because I think that helps.
And we keep saying conversation, but you're talking about how to deal with negativity in people when it's just when
You're
it's surrounded.
And we all have those people in our
Yeah.
life. We all can name them. I
Mhm.
just hope your name is not the toxic person, that's listening to this. But
Yeah.
if you are, start pedaling backwards a little bit about how you show up to the people in your life. Are you telling everybody your same story?
Mhm.
Do you feel that you feel better by telling everybody?
Yeah. Can we tell a toxic person story?
I think so. Go right ahead. I don't know which one you're going to do.
We can edit it out if it's a
Okay.
little much. But we had a situation where we were dealing with a group of people, and a couple of people in the group were jokingly talking about their sex life, I guess you could say, where it was kind of bouncing off each other
Having
in a
fun.
funny way, in a very fun way. And there was one in particular in this conversation that began to judge all those people, which completely shut the conversation down, and everyone backpedaled, and they stopped the conversation because they felt judged and not free to just
That point is better than
converse.
that's exactly what I'm saying.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like that toxic person stepped in and created a judgment, not only a judgment, but an unsafe environment.
And that's what we want to talk about when we have toxic people in our life, is they can create an unsafe environment. And
Okay.
that's that judgment. So you said it great by giving the story and the example. I could see it in my head, but I couldn't get the words out. So
Well,
it's
it just
why-
brought it up.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't know if you telepathically said that to me or what, but that's kind of what brought to mind for me is that situation.
Mhm. Toxic people like to be in control. They like to manipulate. And you may see this person sometimes as the victim or they're the narcissist. These are the toxic people that I'm talking about. And you can't change them.
Mhm.
You can change how I always say how you respond to them.
How you respond. Yeah.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And it's always my number one tool for clients and students,
Yes.
including ourselves, is like, how do we want to respond to this?
Mhm. And how do we take it on?
Yes. How much energy
Do we take it on?
Right, 'cause
Or
we-
do we just reflect it back because
Mhm.
that's not who you are?
Correct. And look to see how many of these individuals you have in your life. So if you've got one or two, that's one thing. But if you have several of these individuals, there's something you're attracting.
We talked about Bagua mirrors several times. I wonder, can you just hang one around your neck when you know you're
So I'm
Gonna
into
be-
feng shui, and Bagua is Bagua mirror, and I've used it in the past to get rid of annoying neighbors and things like that. So
get rid of as in have them move away
move
to a better
away.
place for themselves?
yeah, please fly away, leave this nest. What you're looking for is to not continue to bring that in. And if you're a person that likes drama, are you bringing it? Are you wanting to know the
You're
gossip?
attracting
Are
it.
you attracting it because it gets your energy going.
Mhm.
And that's what's going to be sent to the universe. And you will find more toxic individuals. So that's what you want to look at in part of this too. Many times they're the victim or they're superior. And I think that's what you were talking about with the judgment. If you have someone that's toxic, they will always blame others for their situation. They'll never take on their part or their piece.
Mhm.
So again, if this person's in your life and they're constantly the victim or feeling like they know all the answers and they're superior, that would be a toxic person. And as we talk about how to disconnect and wean these people off of our lives or out of our lives, that's what you want to look like. Who's toxic? What are you doing? And what part and role are you playing in these
Mhm.
connections?
Yeah, because we always have our part.
Yeah, absolutely. What you want to do is begin, like I always say, you want to assess the situation. And that's what we'll do sometimes. We'll sit down and go, how much energy do we want to put into this?
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, that was a recent thing.
Deb Shepherd has learned to listen to me
Recently,
when I feel like we might be in a place where we don't want to spend our time in e-coins. I'm
we
just
have a
teasing.
podcast about eCoins, using your energy. And it is true to realize that that's taking up a lot of value in your life. So if your value comes from helping other people or being in this drama and having people that are like this, what is it about you that you want to look at? You want to assess that is, does this really bring you joy? And because some people are addicted to these things, they want to help everybody. They're addicted to the stories. And that's where we want to take this to the next level. If you don't want that, and if you like it, well, okay.
Well, I think it comes up because everybody talks about, and this has been a recent thing with a lot of clients of yours, that when we talk about this topic, they're feeling sucked dry.
Yes.
They have no more energy coins or e-coins to give. Like they're like, I am just depleted and spent and tired and exhausted. And we feel that way sometimes. And so especially for me, like in a crowd, I can only do so long.
Correct.
And I'm like, I'm depleted. It's gone.
No one has boundaries in crowds. Everyone's just trying to move around, and they'll walk in front of you or cut you off or walk between us. Remember that time that happened at the airport where this guy was trying to.
Oh yeah, he almost knocked you down, and I had to stiff arm him. I'm like, no.
So you feel like your defenses are up with these individuals or these situations.
Right.
So if you're a person that feels exhausted and you give to so many people and you feel like you have to, the biggest key is you don't have to. So how do you start weaning off these relationships? Well, who said that you had to take care of these individuals?
And you don't have to wean off of them either. You can just stay depleted.
Stay depleted, absolutely. But I think we start taking things on.
Yeah.
And I know I've done this in the past, and so you just keep giving, but you don't know. You're hopeful that this person will have a change, and you go, oh, great, that was worth it all. But when it doesn't shift, what is your role in it? How do you look at changing your energy?
And step number one,
not be available.
Well, that's easy.
I think it's really hard for people to say no. One of the tricks that I recommend is, I would love to help you. I can do this on this date for an hour. And you put it out there like 7 or 8 days. You're not saying
when you
no.
really have time or feel like you've saved enough energy to deal with it. Yeah.
It's not a crisis. If that person makes everything a crisis, it's like that cry wolf story, right? How many crises are really in that person's life? Now, if this person isn't that individual, there's a difference.
Yeah.
So you have to assess the situation to think, is this really just them doing this again? Or is this a situation where I really have to pay attention and be there? But you're not saying no, you're putting it in a situation where you are available and you can give them that hour time. If it's someone that comes into your office or things like that, say, yeah, I've got 15 minutes, 10 minutes, don't give them more than that.
Yeah.
Put a time on it because I have to get this report done or whatever that
whatever
is.
your work is. Yeah.
So it's really creating boundaries with that individual. If you're not feeding or putting more fuel on the situation, they're going to find somebody else. Because you're not
they're
giving
toxic, they're just going to move to their next. Yeah.
I think too, we were just saying, decide if you really want to help. We mentioned earlier that listening doesn't mean you have to help them or find a solution for them. It might be not giving advice. And I like saying to people, well, I can't wait till you resolve this. Keep me posted. Start being a cheerleader.
Mhm. Versus a solver.
Yes.
That's a great solution.
Or coming back and go, I think you've had this happen a few other times. What did you do then?
Mhm. I've used that recently. And I remember you saying that, and I really took that on because that's a great way to be a cheerleader is, oh, well, I'm here if you want to run any of your ideas by me.
Perfect.
But I know you're going to get this. I know you're going to be able to find a way.
Mm-hmm. And also recognizing for them how many times this situation comes up in their life.
Mm-hmm.
Like you were talking about the past relationship. I've done that too, where I just keep putting up with it.
Churn
and
it.
complain.
It's like churning butter. It's like you keep regurgitating.
And it's not that delightful though. It's
Yeah.
butter or ice cream.
No.
So it's giving them cheerleading, being positive, inspiring them, but making it theirs,
Mhm.
not for you to have a solution.
Mhm.
And I even say, you know what? It's going to be great. As soon as you get this resolved, let's go celebrate. I'll take you out for lunch.
That's a good one.
Yeah, because otherwise you don't have lunch with them unless they have it resolved, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
But you're giving them a reward for fixing
Problem
it.
solving.
Yeah, problem solving. A lot of people just don't want it to be solved
Mhm.
because that situation or those situations, the toxic energy has more value than them just trying to have a normal life. They're really addicted to
What
it.
about the people that think their solution is the best? You don't ask them for help, but they're already solving your
So they're giving you advice when you don't want it.
right, or they're doing things when you haven't asked for their help.
Oh yeah.
That's toxic too, right? That's like
Absolutely.
the other side of the coin.
Where people go, well, I want to help you. I'm like, no, I don't need your help. And that happens a lot for us at times where people want to give us advice.
Yeah.
And that's why I said earlier, oh, thanks for, thank you.
Deb Shepherd
Yeah. I say,
doesn't
Thank
deal
you.
with that kind of thing.
no, not very well. I don't mind having advice and suggestions
If you ask for
if
it.
I'm in the place of, hey, what do you guys think?
Mhm.
Otherwise, I want to do my own processing. I work with my guides very well.
Mhm.
And sometimes there's a timing before it's solved. I think like we said, we have a process before we end a relationship or change a situation. We have our own process. So if someone gives me advice where I don't want it, I go, just thanks for sharing because I'm not ready to resolve it.
Mhm.
And if that person that keeps coming to you is not ready to resolve it, it's okay for you not to be there for them.
Mhm.
As I said earlier, why don't you record your story and then play it back and see what advice you would give this person?
Or when you resolve it, let's go celebrate. When you figure out what direction you want to go, let's go celebrate. Let me know.
Right. My recommendation, if these people are in your life, don't give a lot of ideas. Don't
Mhm.
provide a bunch of solutions.
Mhm.
Don't. First of all, because they probably don't want to hear it if they keep
Yeah.
coming back. Two, they don't want it to be resolved. And also, you're putting a lot of energy into it. And then you may be disappointed that they come back with the same problem, but they didn't take your advice. So that's the judgment and that energy too.
Vicious cycle. Yeah.
And I always teach, keep it simple, sweetie.
Yes.
Kiss. The biggest thing is you have some really simple one-liners for these individuals. And don't talk a lot because again, you're giving energy that you don't want to give. So keep it simple by going, hey, you got this.
Mhm.
Let me know what you choose to do. Have you talked to anybody else? I'm sure so-and-so would love to hear your story. Giving them those simple things, or when they're sharing or popping your own balloon, taking out what's success for you, to have some one-liners that you can use to nip it where it's not feeding your mind and taking energy, because we will regurgitate what happened in that conversation because
yeah.
it does affect us.
Yeah, we'll replay it. And what we're trying to do is give ways to not take that negative energy on, because that does dim your light.
It does. And you should shine. You've worked really hard.
And why do you think they're coming to you?
Yes.
Because you're shiny.
You're shiny. When you carry that energy of being positive and being a problem solver and having just that care for other people, it's like the moth to the
It's a
flame.
beacon.
It's a
Mhm.
beacon, and people are going to be drawn. And now I just dim my light. No, I'm just kidding. Dim it.
We put a scarf over it.
Look at my life. I think the biggest thing is don't enable individuals that are not willing to take care of themselves. People that are toxic, don't feed in and argue or be that warrior. Pull yourself energy back. That energy is for you. And when you waste all that energy, you become, I'm using the word
Depleted.
dehydrate. You depleted. Yeah.
Mhm.
So I
And you
remember,
want to be able to shine in other areas.
and you want to
versus-
attract. Yeah.
But if that's where you want to spend your e-coins,
Stay
go
there.
for it.
Yeah.
If you want to use your e-coins for other things like love.
Yeah. Prosperity,
Yeah.
health. So this is about, it's okay to care about people and be there for them, but you want to look at how much are they willing to work for their own life. And I tell all my students this, I'll work for you and be there for you, but I'm not going to work harder than you. And that reason is because I believe that they have the ability to empower their life. When you keep enabling somebody, what you're letting them say is that they can't do it on their own. So you don't believe in them. So taking that back and reflecting on what is your intention with these relationships and what is the right thing for you? What do you need from this relationship and what is best for you? So if you get a chance, you haven't listened to our Energy Coin podcast, go back because it will back this up and make you feel empowered to create the boundaries and have a voice in your life. Thank you for listening to today's episode. I hope it inspired you. If you enjoyed our conversation, make sure you subscribe so that you get notified of new episodes. And let's get connected. Visit debshepard.com for more insights, support, workshops, and a book a session with me. And finally, always remember, your loved ones in spirit are just a thought away. Even though they're on the other side, they're always by your side.